Hi, I'm a former higher ed CMO, and I have a confession to make. I have done at least 8 website redesigns over the course of my career, and honestly, the thought of doing another one kind of makes me twitch. They are some of the biggest, most significant projects that we do in higher education. And I have messed up a lot of things in those processes, particularly, I would say, the ones early in my career, although I feel confident that you could find a faculty member at any institution where I've done a redesign that would say that I messed up even later in my career on those projects. They are tough, and communicating to your internal stakeholders around these projects is one of the biggest challenges. So when I saw Meaghan Milliorn post about winning a PRSA award for her approach to internal communications at the University of Arkansas Little Rock, I needed to talk to her. I think the work that she did to engage her campus community and help them have some buy-in on the project is absolutely crucial for website redesign success. Meaghan is the Senior Director of Web Strategy and Operations at UA Little Rock. She is a fantastic leader who has been at that institution for 16 years. She has spoken at a number of conferences, including, and I'm going to call it High Ed Web because I refuse to call it by any other name at this point. And she is going to give you all kinds of insight into how she approached getting that campus-wide buy-in on her project. I hope you enjoy. You're listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, the podcast where marketing minds in higher ed come to pull back the curtain, spill a little tea, and talk honestly about what it takes to market in this industry. I'm Jaime Hunt, the founder of Solve Higher Ed, author of Heart Over Hype, and a former campus CMO who spent more than 2 decades navigating the weird, wonderful world of higher education marketing. This show is for the strategists, the storytellers, the change agents, and anyone who has ever tried to get Faculty Senate on board with a rebrand. Here we get candid about the challenges and share the ideas that are shaping the future of our field. Sound like your kind of conversation? Then let's get into it. Well, hey, Meaghan, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm super excited to have you on to talk about this topic. I don't know if everybody knows, but earlier in my career, I was a director of web strategy. And before we started hitting recording, I kind of twitch when I think about website redesigns. And you have just come out of a website redesign. They are big projects.
It is brutal. Mm-hmm.
I actually don't know if there's anything bigger that we do.
No, this is probably the biggest, and it usually coincides with other things going on at your university.
Yeah, you'll be doing a whole brand relaunch and a full website redesign. And it's for all of you listening who are web people, I feel you. I feel you in my bones. These are massive, massive
thoughts
endeavors.
And prayers. Yeah.
But one of the things that most interested me about the redesign that you did at UA Little Rock was that you really did a lot of work on the internal communication side. And I'm such a big believer that change management needs to be part of these projects, and internal communications is such a big piece of that I got really excited when I saw you all won an award for your internal comms strategy for this. So I'm really excited to talk with you about that. So one of the things that I think was so remarkable about what you did was you very early recognized that you needed to build trust and alignment campus-wide. I'm really curious because I've seen this. I was telling Meaghan, my web strategy job was my last job before I became a VP. And I thought I was done with website redesigns, but I've now had to do one at every VP job I've had since then. These are constant efforts. And I'm really curious about how you framed that project internally so people didn't just see this as a technical exercise, because I've definitely run into that.
So we really wanted to have buy-in from the very beginning. I mean, because our site was so huge and this was going to be a massive project, we knew that it was going to impact everybody in some way. So we didn't want people to be frustrated. We didn't want them to feel like they were blindsided or they didn't know what was going on or why are you changing this? Or I didn't know about that. I had been through an experience like that before where that was the situation and people felt very, left out and frustrated. And my boss and I were like, whatever we got to do, we need to make sure that doesn't happen this time. And so we just knew that we were going to have conversations with people from the very beginning. And I think it really helped that the first mention of the redesign came from our chancellor.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so I think it was at one of we had like a university assembly at the beginning of the academic year. I kind of call it the State of the Union. So she speaks, and some of the other administrators speak to the faculty and staff, and some of the student representatives attend as well. And so she kind of teased the idea that this redesign was coming. And so people heard about that. And I think hearing it from her for the first mention was really helpful because it let people know that our chancellor is supporting this. It's got her backing. And so I think that really helped. And then really soon after that is when we started sending campus-wide emails about the redesign. And so that was kind of our first tactic that we did, and we consistently had campus emails throughout the whole once the communication started, 2.5 to 3 years.
So to get the framework around this 3-year project, what all were you doing? Were you switching CMSs? Were you doing a full visual identity refresh? What was involved in this particular redesign?
So we did not switch CMS. We explored that idea, but we decided not to. So we stuck with WordPress. But we went from being hosted on campus to being, hosted on the cloud with another company. So we did that. And that didn't affect our users, but it was something we needed to do to, support this growing site. But then we had everything else. We redid everything else, all the development, all the design. We had a content strategy. So myself and our content strategist, we met with every department, every unit for a couple of years and reviewed their websites and updated content. And so it was a huge, huge lift. It was a significant amount of work, but we didn't want to just have new designs with old, outdated content that wasn't benefiting our students. So that was very, very important. So we did that, before the content. But we had fresh designs. Some of that was done in-house and some of that we did with an outside agency called Fruition. And we also redid our information architecture. And then all of the development was done in-house. We got 2 super talented developers, and so they built everything.
That's the very first redesign that I ever did when I was a web strategist was exactly like that. We touched every single piece of content that went into the
Everything.
new site. And it can be so tempting to be like, we're just going to like port everything over or put a new wrapper around everything. But it's so smart to be thinking about it as like, this is our opportunity to clean this up. And I'm guessing you came across a lot of really outdated content.
So outdated.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much when we would meet with departments, we would do a virtual meeting, but we would screen share. And so we would go through every page. And a lot of times they would see a page that I don't think they'd ever seen before. And it was their site. And it was just something that was like buried. And I had to explain it's a live page. I know you can't find it from maybe your navigation, but it is out there and it could be found through search or through some other deep linking. But there was a lot of outdated content, just information about scholarships that didn't exist anymore, or like certificate programs that weren't a certificate anymore, things like that could have a really negative impact on students. Outdated images, we were able to update imagery for like our housing, our residences, which of all sites that needs updated images, it's housing because people want to see where they're going to live. So yeah, we touched every single page. There were some people at the very beginning of our redesign and they thought, well, can you just go ahead and update like the admission site and make that live? And we were like, well, some universities do that, but we just didn't want people going to like this beautiful admission site and then they click over to the scholarships website and it's like super dated and awful. We just thought that would be a really jarring user experience for people. So we just decided let's do it all at once.
That's such a heavy lift. I've done it both ways, the, like, piecemeal bringing up pages and then the let's wait till we have it all done, and I agree with you. It can be so jarring to be in this beautiful new look and feel, and especially if you're changing the navigation architecture because
Right.
suddenly the links are totally different structure and yeah.
I think that was one of the biggest reasons that we didn't do piecemeal is because our global navigation would be you'd have a different over on this side, and then over here you have a different set of links. So that was kind of the a big reason for not doing it side by side.
I would love to know, are websites in higher ed getting better? Like, are we? I mean, projects like this are making them better, right? But how many institutions still need to undertake this effort of like actually strategically thinking about every page on their site? Because it seems like, I started working in higher ed in 2004, and that's fairly early into having websites, like a
Mhm.
decade into having higher ed websites. Um, and it has been the Wild West for ever
Yes.
since. And I feel like projects like what you're talking about are trying to rein in that. But I wonder how
Mhm.
many institutions still need to do that.
Oh, I'm sure there are still many. And it's hard because now with AI search, you may think that your site is providing all those answers, but AI is gonna find something on your site that's outdated and old, and next thing you know, it's like your the top search result. So, I think AI is forcing people to think about their content either again or in a different way.
Yeah. I would totally agree with that.
Mhm.
And I will say I talked to someone from I don't want to say what the school is because I don't want to embarrass them. Although I think they presented on this at I'm never going to call it anything other than High Ed Web. Sorry guys. But they had 18.3 million web pages.
What?
Yes. And I'm like,
Oh my
how do you even
gosh.
rein that in? I mean, you almost have to just blow it up because they let faculty have personal web pages. They let students have web pages. They let back in, the good old days, anybody could have a website, alumni, like 18.3 million.
That's an that's I don't know, I can't think about that. I'd probably have to get a different job.
Right. You get like hives. Um, so it sounds like you had, like most campuses have decentralized
We did yeah.
environments. So I mean, I'm assuming that played a role in your decision to have all of this internal communications around the project.
We really wanted people to feel like they were a part of this. We didn't want it to be like, "We're just gonna tell you what's going on, and then we're gonna launch the site, and that's it." We really wanted people to understand that we valued them, that they had a role in this, and we thought, if people feel like they have a stake in something, they're going to take care of it and value it more. And so we didn't want this to be seen as something that only marketing and communications owned or something that only IT services owned. We wanted it to be like this shared partnership. So beyond the campus emails that we would send to everybody, we had these meetings. My content strategist and myself, Bobby, we would meet with them and we would go over their sites and go through them. And I think the biggest thing that helped with those updates is that we didn't ask them to do any of the editing of what needed to be updated. We tried that at the beginning. We did try that, and it just went nowhere. People just did not make the time. They were overwhelmed. We thought that they would be so eager to go in and update everything, and that was our original plan, and it just didn't work. So, we shifted gears, and that's when we started having these meetings. We'd go through every page, and we'd basically say, "You tell us what needs to change. What is this good? Is this not good?" And Bobby would take meticulous notes, and then we would have a game plan of what needed to happen, and she and I would be the ones that actually made all the updates. And once we told them that, it was like this weight just lifted off their shoulders. Like they didn't have to find the time to update their sites on top of teaching or on top of managing their team. They could tell us what needed to be done. We would make those updates, and it really helped those relationships between our team and the rest of the campus because we valued their expertise. Like, we needed them to tell us about their website. They knew the content better than we did, things about academic programs or research centers. But we were the ones that were going to be making those updates for them. And that was like the biggest, way to cultivate that trust between us and the campus community.
I it sounds like you had to pivot though.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
How did that conversation with your leadership go? Like, "Hey, by the way, we're now taking on a whole bunch more work to be able to get this website live."
I think they understood it. I mean, it was more daunting for me and Bobby. I mean, we were frustrated in a way because we had such high hopes that these people are going to get their sites done, and we would check in with them and be like, "Hey, how is this coming along?" And there were many times where people would say, "Oh, well, we're having to focus on, registration right now for classes, so we're going to get to that in October." And we'd be like, "It is July. We cannot wait until October." So we just had to be like, "You know what? We're just taking it over." If I knew back then how much work it was actually going to be, I probably would have just, I don't know, crawled under my desk because it was such a significant amount of work. But oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that we did it because once we were, implementing the new design and the new development, we didn't have like this gorgeous site with like language and idea, content that was outdated and, not really in our updated brand and tone. It would have been a poor experience if we had tried to have that old content with our new design.
Well, one of the things that I think you had to do that a lot of us have to do is a content freeze.
Mhm.
And every time I've done a content freeze, there has been rioting in the streets and, people with like, pitchforks and stuff.
Pitchforks,
How
yeah.
did you communicate that in a way that didn't make people do that? Or did they do
Okay.
that?
So what I realized, when I was thinking back on everything is by the time we got to that phase, we had already been consistently communicating with people for like 2 years. So when we had to tell them, and I'll explain what a content freeze is because maybe other people don't use that term, but that's what we use. So because we were going to be migrating our old site to the new site, we had to make a copy and then migrate it. And so we had to make sure people were not editing the old sites anymore because if they were still making updates and then we make a copy and they're still making updates over here, then our new site that we would launch wouldn't match the update. So we couldn't trust people just to say, "Hey, stop editing." So we had to take their access away. And we did that kind of in rounds so that not everybody lost access at the exact same time. And we also made it to where if they still had like a mission critical edit, something that had to be updated after the freeze, we would be the ones to make that for them because we'd have to make it on the old site and the new site. So these content freeze emails, yes, it is a little kind of nerve wracking to tell somebody, "Hey, I'm going to take your access away and I'm going to freeze your site and you can't touch it for a couple of months." That's scary. But I realized because we had been talking to people for about 2 years now, we had gotten to that point where they really trusted us and they kind of felt like, okay, I trust that this is part of their process. They said I'm going to get access back later on, so I'll just, this is fine. Um, the only kind of resistance we had, there were a few sites that asked, could they be migrated in a later round because they still were working on something on their site. I think they had some registrations for like some summer camps or other things. And we said, yes, y'all can do that because it fit in with our schedule. It was fine to kind of delay that. There was one site that asked if we could do all of the work over Christmas break when we were closed. And we said, no, that's not going to work for us.
That's lovely.
Um, because we like to take time off too. Um, but once we said no, we can't do that, they were okay. It's like I guess they just had to try. But they didn't push back. I think assuring people that they will get access back. You know, you're going to get training for the new site. We're going to give you access again. I think that was like reassuring to people. I think they were just afraid that they would never get to own their website ever again, and we weren't going to do that.
Southeast Missouri State University needed to launch more targeted campaigns faster, yet they were bogged down by manual campaign builds, slow approvals, and vendor overload. With Element 451, they eliminated 5 vendor tools and gained marketing superpowers in one platform. They saw a 13% increase in applications, processed applications within 2 days, and achieved 30 to 35% email open rates. The impact was personalized, automated campaigns running at scale without the drag. Ready to turn your next campaign around in hours, not weeks? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. How many decentralized users have access to the CMS?
When we started the redesign, we had 350 site owners, which was so many. And there were so many that had access that didn't even work here anymore.
Oh, wow.
And we just had never been up, and nobody told us like that person retired or that person doesn't need access anymore. There was no plan or policy on how to keep users updated. And so now with the new site launching, we require people to come to a training that we give, and it's virtual, but it's live. And they have to go through the training, and we kind of just go over some basics, creating pages, editing your menus, basically the most common tasks that you would need to know. Once you go through the training, then we give you editing access again. So right now, we have, I think, 170 people that have been trained, and they have access to like their specific site, not to everything.
That's a huge cleanup of yeah.
Yes.
That was it. When I was at Radford, I think we had 400 seats, and I think we had 250 people in the seats, and it was like, like this person hasn't logged in 18 months. Do they still need to have the access, or can they have read-only access to be able to approve what their admin has done or fill in the blank? But I think that's another piece of website governance that we don't always talk about, is that sort of when you have a decentralized editing model, there's some urgency, I think, in keeping that as tight as it can be to avoid a lot of risk. I mean, if you have folks who don't need access, haven't gone to training, no longer work there, fill in the blank, like there's risk there. I had somebody take down the entire website twice. He had his access permanently removed after the second
Oh
time.
my, no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the things we were able to kind of change with the new site is we revised our user roles. So what people had access to and even just a clearer name of the user. So they're called a site manager now, not a site owner. And we have editors still. Though we had no policy in place prior. So if somebody emailed us and said, "Hey, my new employee needs access," we just gave them access. I mean, we didn't have anything in place to kind of safeguard that, and now we do. And we also say in the training, if you have access and you haven't logged in or edited anything in like a year, then you're going to either need to come to training again, or you may not need access anymore. Um, and that's okay. I mean, you may think that you need access, and then you realize I didn't actually ever touch the website, and so you don't need access anymore.
Yeah. Well, there's like a certain level of responsibility that you have to have if you have access. And I think if you're really not using it, you don't want to have that even be an option, I would think. If you're smart, like if you get hacked and it's your account that gets hacked and now they're using your account to go in and do something nefarious on the website, you don't want that to be attached to your name. No. So when you were communicating with folks, what did you find to be the most effective? I know you've mentioned emails, but did you have any other tools or, in-person meetings or synchronous meetings or anything like that that helped you stay connected?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a few things. I think the meetings that we had with each department was very beneficial. And because sometimes it wasn't like a full department of people, it would maybe two people, like the department head and maybe somebody else, or maybe it was three people. And one thing that was so beneficial about that is it gave us FaceTime with them. I mean, some people had never they'd seen my name in an email, maybe, but they'd not really ever had a reason to interact with me. The website for them was kind of out of sight, out of mind. But having these conversations with them was a chance for us to emphasize how important your site is. This is why we need to work on it. So I think those meetings were really important. And we also had focus groups where when we had the wireframes created, we had, I think, 3 or 4 focus groups where we invited the campus to register to attend, and then we had focus groups for just the designs after the wireframes. So both of those, wireframe and design focus groups, they were opportunities for people to see what we were working on, and we did the listening, and they kind of shared their opinion. I think that really helped people feel valued because it's not like we were, like, keeping these designs secret for, like, this big reveal, it's like, they're in progress, this is what we're working on, this is how this page is going to tie into this page, what do you think of that? Does this work to you? Or, what do you think of the way this looks? So we weren't trying to kind of steer the boat in those conversations, so I think that was just a nice conversation, like a nice way to, have that relationship with people. So I think the focus groups made a really big impact.
It can be really, really tempting to skip those. Like, because I'm working with a client right now where we're doing focus grouping around their brand platform. And it's she's racked with anxiety about going and bringing, we've did some focus groups and now we're going back forward with, like, this is the brand messaging platform, and she's like, they're gonna tear it apart and this is really stressful, like, do we have to do this step? And it's like, you do if you want the buy-in, because that's the thing. Your previous brand, one of your complaints was you didn't have the buy-in on that, and that's in part because you may not have, it was before her time. The previous person may not have done this listening. And if you just, like, lower your defensiveness and don't let yourself feel like it's any sort of personal attack if somebody doesn't like something, and really be open to that feedback, it makes such a difference.
Yes, and that's exactly how I felt, like, before we were even at the wireframe phase. This is way before. My boss was like, we need to have these conversations. We need to have these focus group opportunities." And I was like, no, I'm not doing that." Because I didn't wanna open myself up to, like, criticism. I didn't want people to see something I was proud of and say they hated it or it was ugly or whatever. Um, I got over myself and realized, okay, they're probably not gonna say that anyway. And there is a lot of value in just providing these opportunities for people to come. Um, we didn't want to get to the end of the redesign and have people say, "I didn't have a chance to see this. I never knew this was happening." Um, we just didn't want that to happen. So it's like, okay, we're going to provide these opportunities. They were like an hour. We didn't work with like an agency to run the focus groups. It was just us. It was low pressure. It was just like, let me show you this. And nobody said, I hate that. So if somebody had a question about something or if they didn't like something, it didn't mean that we had to like immediately make that change. But we were validating their thoughts and listening to them and taking it into consideration. And I will say, I never forget this because it was very helpful. There was one person that had an idea about something in our global navigation, and it was something we had kinda talked about as a group, but just I guess we didn't think about it long enough. But this person pointed it out, and they're like, "Hey, I don't think that makes sense. That it makes me think of this. Maybe you should rename it to this other idea." And we thought about it for a while after the fact, and we're like, "That is spot on. That person's comments were spot on." They helped us see something that we were just you're too close to it. So sometimes you can't see, what a visitor may be seeing. And the change that we made, I think, was essential and crucial, and I'm very thankful that we had that, feedback because it was the right feedback.
It's so important to get that. And I feel like people present the feedback in a I don't know if I want to say kinder, but in a kinder
Yeah.
way when it's before it's launched. And in
Yes,
my
I do too.
experience, when it's after, it's like they're throwing the tomatoes. Like, you did this without me, so I'm tearing this apart. And the
Right.
very same person, if they're asked before something launches, it's like in the spirit of collaboration versus
Mhm.
the spirit of them feeling some kind of way about being left out.
The conversations that we had with people and some of those, meetings that we had, it really kind of strengthened some of the relationships we had with people who we never had a relationship with before. There are just some personalities out there that maybe didn't want to collaborate with you in the past, or, for whatever reason, you just didn't mesh well. Um, that there are specific people I can think of who it's like now we are like light years beyond the way it was a few years ago. Like, I don't fear that person anymore. I If they email me now, I don't, get nervous because we were able to have these, you know, face-to-face conversations about their website or about an edit. And it's like we both listened to each other, and it really um, had that trust build up between us and that relationship and that partnership. And I mean, if you had told me a few years ago that I would now be at this place with a couple of these people, I'd be like, "Really?" Because there's some people just have strong personalities, and, um, when you take the time to have a conversation with them, it can make all the difference in the world.
Well, and sometimes they have their strong opinions. I would say most of the time, the people that are bringing these really strong opinions, it's because they care so much,
Mhm, yeah.
and that's a good
It
thing.
is. Like, they feel so protective of, like, their site, like, their department site, the biology site, the English site, whatever it may be. They love their site, they feel so protected, and sometimes they may think at first that you're just bulldozing it, that you're just taking it away, that you're gonna change everything, but when you talk, they learn, "Oh, they're not doing that. They need to update this and that for this reason," and once you can kinda share that information with them, I mean, it really builds that bridge between people.
There's somebody who was, I would say, a difficult ish campus partner for me at a previous institution that honestly I'm friends with today. And
Mhm,
it is several institutions ago, where it was sort of a compromise. We both felt like we got what we needed out of that
mhm.
conversation. They felt really heard. And then they became an advocate for me and my
Yeah.
team. Like, no, I worked with Jamie on this, and
Mhm.
she's not unbendable. Um, and that I think helps. You're building a relationship that may help you build other relationships.
Yes. Yeah, and that they can kind of, carry the torch and sing your praises to their colleagues or their people on their team. It can go a long way.
I I'm really curious about if this change, with the website and the approach that you took with getting the campus buy-in, if that had any overarching impact on the perception of marketing communications role from being a service provider to a strategic partner. I know we've been talking about that a lot on this show in the last couple episodes of getting out of that sort of service model into the strategic partner
Mhm.
framework. And I'm curious about if you saw that happen.
Yes, and I kind of consider that a secondary outcome of our communication plan. Our primary goal was to have, wide campus buy-in and support for this huge digital project. But this secondary outcome that happened was that our web team, we were able to establish ourselves as the authority, as the voice behind the website, as the people that own the website. And since we were also trying to implement a web governance plan, it all, came together. It was very beneficial because, it was our team that was consistently, sending out these emails. We were having lunch and learns also. There were also presentations for like our board of visitors, for our faculty senate, these other campus groups. So people kept seeing like our faces or our names, and that really helped position ourselves as the authority on this. And yeah, I think they know now that communications and marketing, the web team. They are the people you go to if you, need have a question about your website, if you need some support with your website. I think that was kind of hazy before.
That's huge. And really, what better department to have that impact than the web? Because literally every department on campus has a website.
Yes, yes.
And they,
And it wouldn't have happened if we didn't have that communication plan.
yeah.
Like if we had sent one email and then launched the site, there would be no identification of, okay, well, who's doing this project? Who's overseeing it? We would have lost out on that.
Yeah. What was your cadence for providing updates?
So the campus emails, at first they were kind of monthly, and then sometimes we may go a couple months without one. But every email that we sent, we also put it on our Redesign website. So we had a website where everything lived so that people could always refer to it. And that's where we had like our timeline. We also kind of had information that explained why we were doing a redesign, why it matters. So the emails were really regular, but not necessarily every single month. And then we had lunch and learn. So we would host these like 1 hour virtual presentations on people's lunchtime. And we did that probably once a semester. And so we would provide updates on where we were in the phase and what was coming up, or if there was anything new that people need to know. And not everybody attended those, but people could sign up for them. And so maybe we'd have like 30 people attend
Oh,
each one.
wow.
Some less than that. 30 may have been our max, but we just tried to be consistent with whatever we were doing, whether it was emails or meetings or presentations. We just wanted to be consistently communicating to the various audiences.
So, what's next now that your site is live and you're in this sort of like honeymoon phase of having it launched, or the glow of having a website be born, as I like to call it? What's next for the web team now?
So we've still continued to kind of launch a couple of new functionality things for the website. Like we have an improved latest news feed that we rolled out. We're adding something soon to our news website. So there's a couple things like that that are still happening and in the works. The biggest thing that we've done since launch was trainings. So we've had 7 trainings sessions since February. We have another one um, coming up this fall. Anybody can sign up for the training. So we usually have um, 15 to 30 people in the training that come. So those have continued almost every month since we launched. And one thing that we're continuously thinking about is making sure the site is accessible. We that was a huge goal when we launched, but since now people have access and they're editing their site, we want to make sure that they're still following those guidelines. If anything changes that we need to adjust, we want to make sure we're training people on how to do something with accessibility in mind. So some of those things are still happening. I'd say the biggest stress of the redesign is gone, because we have launched now. But like we had told everybody, the website's a living tool. It's never just like done. You're constantly kind of thinking of different iterations or different updates that you need to make.
When you can't have people slide back into their old ways.
No.
And like, we're going to put every single thing ever on our webpage. Or
We've learned that. It's interesting what people want to do with their site. There are parameters on what they can do, but we have discovered ways that some people are kind of using some of our designs, and so we have to kind of think continuously. Okay, I didn't think I needed to tell them not to do this, but I guess I do. So, and it's nothing bad. It's just things you gotta think about. I don't know, it's like raising children or dogs. You have to continuously guide them to be the best that they can be.
There was often times where I would be like, "This is very creative use of the assets you were given."
That's
I
a very nice way of saying that.
Yeah, I really admired that you were this creative with how you approached this. Unfortunately, it is out of our guidelines, and I would be happy to have someone on my team help you to continue to be creative, but within the guidelines. That
That
was
is such a great way that you said that. Mhm.
that's that's how I had, because at first I was like, you're breaking all the rules. What are you doing? This is unacceptable. Like, no, you have to acknowledge they think they did something real
Real snazzy.
remarkable.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And they have not, or rather they have, but not in a good way.
Right.
And you know, truly, I felt like, you probably see this too, that people saw their websites often as their creative outlet.
Yes.
If they were not in a creative role,
Oh, yeah.
this is their chance to
This
bring
is
in
their
that
chance to
clip art.
shine.
Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Or I wanna have different colors, or I wanna, yeah. And, you know, trying to help shape people into like, yes, you can be creative, but not like that.
Right.
Yeah.
We want you to be creative, and we've given you some tools to do so, but there are some limits, there are some guidelines. Um, so yeah, it that's been something we're learning as the owners of the website, as the people that are doing the training. We're having to figure out ways to communicate that to editors.
You're making me like really reminiscent about my time as a web strategy director. And I will be really honest. Um, I could work on building a website every day. Like it is
Really.
still probably my top favorite thing to do is do stuff on websites. Like it never felt like work. I remember one time I told my boss, or I was in a meeting with my boss and I was like, don't tell Danny, but I would do this job for free. And he was like, don't tell Jamie, but I'd pay her double. And I was like, wait a second.
Oh,
Like,
no.
but it was very much like I would absolutely, like, the web is such a great environment to work in. Um, but you're making me nostalgic for it. I'm going to be honest.
And it's great when you work with people on your team that value it just as much as you do.
Yeah.
None of this would have worked if the people on my team didn't care
Yeah.
or if they just didn't see the value in it. I'm very fortunate that the developers and our content strategists, I mean, they worked so hard and they were very proud of what we were able to do. And I think that's so important when you're working on a redesign. If the people in your team or if your leadership doesn't value it, it's going to be hard to have it be successful.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's true for all aspects of what we do.
Mhm.
Like having that passion for what you do is
Mhm.
just really takes the work that you're doing across the finish line in such a significant way.
Mhm.
My last question for you is, what is the one piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's kicking off a project like this?
You can't think about you can't wait to communicate about your project until you're launching it. Like, it can't be something that is an afterthought. Like you asked me at the beginning, did we have a different CMS or what did we do differently? And like the technology is very important. Your CMS, your information architecture, your security, content, all those things are super, super important. And you have to think about them when you're going through a redesign, but you also have to think about the communication and the people. Like it can't be something that you're just, oh, I'll get to that down the road. So many of us do that. I mean, when you're working on a redesign, you're just so focused on like the website and you forget to talk about what's going on with your campus partners. But if you wait, it's not gonna be a successful launch, or you're not gonna have that buy-in that you need so crucially. So that's the biggest of advice is don't wait until the end of your project to start talking about it.
And I'm going to plus one that from a place of failure where I have earlier in my career not seen the value of it and learned that lesson. And it's a harsh lesson. If you wait or you under communicate what's going to happen, it's a really bad lesson to learn. So learn from Meaghan in the what to do, learn from me in that example of what not to do. Like and I will say, like, I didn't do it because I felt like it was just one more thing in a
Mhm.
busy,
Right.
huge project. But it's one more thing that's gonna make your life easier.
It's gonna make such a difference.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if people have questions for you or wanna track you down, where can they find you?
They can send me an email or they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm available. I would love to talk about it. I want to help people. And our Redesign website still has all the campus emails that I sent on there. So if people want to take a look at how we were talking about it, they can do that. It's at ualr.edu/redesign. So everything is there.
That's awesome. I am going to put that in the show notes so you
Okay.
can easily find that website. I think it can be really helpful to see how other schools have communicated.
Hmm.
Um, well, this has been fabulous. Listeners, as always, you can find me on LinkedIn at Jaime Hunt, JaimeHunt. You can find me on my website at solvehighered.com. You can find my book at heartoverhypebook.com. I would love it if you would give a review to this show. It helps other people find us. And until then, let's go bust some silos. Thanks for listening to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and contact drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.